Well, good day and welcome to you. It is April the 5th. I hope you're having a great day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary William. As always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. And just take a brief moment. If you want to know more about this information, check out some of the links that I provided. I have some websites, I think, that give you some really good background information so you can understand this information a lot better. So hopefully you'll take advantage of it. Now, I have a comment to cover. Came a few days ago from one Marie Harris. I'm sure there's more than one. But this one actually commented on something that we had talked about in a video that I put up maybe a week or so ago. And just to give you a background, because not everybody might have heard the video that I put up or heard other videos where we talk about it, but it's quite important relative to this information, but also, and more importantly, relative to what we're seeing in the world today, which is divisions. Now, of course, we're pretty much all aware, unless you've just totally disassociated yourself and disconnected from society as a whole, but even, just watching the news or dealing with people in your own life, I'm sure you could see it, is how divided we've come as a people. We all have our own way of thinking. And I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but a lot of people are getting very much entrenched in their own viewpoint on things, much more than it was years ago. And it seems to keep getting more and more and more. I know one could say that social media has a lot to do with it, which I'm sure it does. But the divisions in thought are still there. And what is causing it? Why is it like this? So Marie commented, and she says, it's not really about Republicans and Democrats. It's about conservatives and far left-wing radical socialism and globalism. The Democratic Party is extinct. It no longer exists. So I was thinking about how I could answer this, and I want to talk about it in two different ways. One, if Marie and I were having a conversation and I didn't know anything about this information, and I was just talking about what I know about politics. And then I want to kind of tie it into what we're seeing today, because it's very important, and it will help you, I think, understand this information more and perhaps give you a tad bit more hope for the future, because it's not going to be like this for forever. But anyway, if I was just talking to Marie and we were talking politics and somebody said this to me, whether it was Marie or somebody else, I would say, how long have you been paying attention to politics? A long time, because I've been paying attention to the political scene here in the United States since I was probably in late elementary school. Have always had an interest in politics, never really had an interest in running for office or anything like this, but consider myself an amateur political pundit for sure. But anyway, and with a lot of things, you start to see trends. And I think where people have a problem with what they're seeing today politically is they haven't been following politics for very long. I'm not saying Marie is like this, but the people who say things like this in my life, when I really ask them, how long have you really been paying attention to politics? Like really seriously following it. Know the characters and the figures throughout the last few decades and so forth, and what they said and those kind of things. They have a limited view on what is going on politically today. So they get very charged when they hear things in the media, whether it's from the right or the left, but didn't take the time over the years to really follow it, and now they're starting to follow it more and more, which actually Benjamin Creme's master, in one of his articles, talked about the interest in politics. This is even on the right and the left, and the reason why people are paying attention more and more to politics has to do with the waking up of humanity, actually. I know I was saying that I was going to first talk about if I didn't know anything about this information. Sorry about that. But anyway, but they haven't been following it very long. Because if you look, both sides do to the other side when the other side is in power, and they've been doing it probably longer than I've even been following politics, but especially over the last few decades, where one is in power, the other one does something sinister or does their own dirty little tricks, and then they be getting power, and the other one does the exact same tricks and then blames them for this, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And therefore, ergo vis-a-vis, nothing is getting done. So, for instance, looking at what you talked about in terms of the left-wing radical socialism and globalism, okay? The conservatives or the Republicans in the United States, believe it or not, have been more successful in creating socialism in this country than the left, even though they are accusing the left of it all the time. And I'm going to explain why. Same thing with globalism, or you could also call it imperialism and fascism. So the right now are accusing Biden of being this authoritarian dictator, wanting absolute control over things, eroding the rights and the freedoms of people by mandates and so forth. But yet, if you look at it historically, the Republicans have been more guilty of that than the Democrats. And the reason why, let's start with socialism, which is one of the three economic ideals. You got communism, socialism, and capitalism. They're all economic ideals. There isn't a perfect form of any one of those anywhere in the world. But the reason why I say, and I know that the Republicans have had a more socialist agenda and been successful at getting their socialist agenda out there, is because if you look at over the past 50 years, a lot of corporate bailouts, a lot of corporate tax cuts for the rich and so forth, which is really socialism, but socialism for the rich and socialism for the corporations. So all the bailouts that have happened over the years have all given the lion's share of the money to the corporations and less to the people. The Democrats, to some degree, not perfectly, but to some degree, have fought for more socialism for the everyday person, whether it's universal health care or something like that. And the Republicans have always been against it, always said, we never have the money, it's going to create hyperinflation. They always scare the bejesus out of everyone. But in the end, if you look at it historically, the Republicans have been a more socialist party and been more successful in getting their socialist agenda out there than the Democrats ever could. But it's all been for the rich and for the corporations, never for the people. Then if you look at the globalism, the Republicans have had a more successful way of creating a globalist society than the Democrats have, through imperialism, through the Pax Americana foreign policy that the United States has had over the decades, using the military and the Pentagon to, in every war, whether it was the Korean conflict, the Vietnamese War, the Vietnam War, both Iraqi wars and the war in Afghanistan and so forth, and even other wars that weren't really declared as wars, but we created these little conflicts here or there, are all a part of, and both sides have been guilty of this, by the way, so I guess I should say that too. But the Republicans have been more successful and more, and I hate using that word successful because it's not a success, it's been nothing but misery for the people, but they've been more at it than the Democrats have over the years. Reagan, Bush, W. Bush, and Trump have all had their way of expanding the American empire in a way, and ironically, Trump less than the other ones, but the other ones, especially the Bushes, oh my gosh. But anyway, and then in terms of fascism, I have a video I put up years ago where I talked about the dangers of fascism in the United States, but both parties are ineffective. Both parties don't want to really help the people. Both parties are corrupt. And if somebody like Marie had told me this to myself as just as a person and included both parties equally, I would have this kind of response to it. Because I think the best and the healthiest and the most effective way of really looking at the political environment, not only in the United States, but around the world, is to see it objectively and not so personally, this is my side versus that side. But what's happening now that's really frightening in the United States is how the Republican Party has hijacked Christianity. And it's been going on since the 80s when they started doing this with starting with the Christian Coalition and some of the other groups and political PACs and so forth, political action committees throughout the decades that were Christian-based. And using Jesus, using the Bible, and so forth, and even now with the wars that have been going on over the past 20 years, using words patriotism, referring to their own people. If you follow them, then you're a good Christian. If you follow them, then you're patriotic. You're a real American. That's the terms that they're using today. We got real America, and then you got everybody else. But the danger, what's going on now, and this is really quite frightening if you really follow it, is how they're starting to demonize the Democrats, calling them all sorts of names, satanic worshipers, the cabal. I mean, all these things that these conspiracy theories like to propagate, and these rumors and so forth that have no foundation in reality. But millions of people believe that the Democrats are evil. They're not. They're just Americans that have a different political view, and if you took all that out and it was just the conservatives versus the Republicans, you would have more people like Representative, is it Ratzinger? Where is he from? Ohio, I think. The one, he and Liz Cheney are the two people on the January 6th committee. But anyway, and one of the things that he said, I think he has a very clear perspective on things. Even though he's a Republican, I don't agree with him on a lot of political issues, but I do agree with him on this, where he said, the progressive's job is to keep things moving forward. The conservative job is to slow things down. And if you were to look at it politically, that's really what should be going on. But right now it's like a sporting event. It's my side versus your side, on both sides. So to say that the Democrats are the guilty party and the Republicans are not, there's just no truth to it. You have to look at it objectively like that. But the divide is there. Now, to get into really where this division is coming into, not only in reference to this information, but what we're seeing, it's an energetic thing. And we talk about it all the time on this channel, about the sword of cleavage, because how important it is to the immediate and long-term future for humanity. It's going to give humanity a choice. We have to make, apparently, according to Maitreya, humanity has to make a choice. We have to make a choice to either follow the suggestions of Maitreya, which is not his suggestions, but the truth of the matter, which is we must learn to live together in peace. We have to learn to live together as one family under one God. That is the truth of it. Whether you believe in God or not, that's what we should be doing. We don't live like that. So we're living in a world that's quite divided. We're living in a world that's quite violent. We're living in a world where there's a lot of fear and distrust amongst people and so forth. But eventually, this division is going to give humanity a very clear choice to either learn to share and cooperate or no longer live on this planet. That's the choice, really. Now, Maitreya says that the choice is simple, and he also knows the answer that humanity is going to give to that choice, which is we will learn to live together. And the opportunity and the future that it will give humanity is quite extraordinary. But energetically, the sword that was referred to in the Bible as the sword of cleavage was a symbol. It's an energy that's sent out through the Christ, and it makes you more of who you really are. So if you're someone who's very fearful of the future, you become more fearful. If you're conservative of the future and reactionary, you become even more conservative and reactionary. Conversely, if you are more progressive, you become even more progressive. If you're more fundamental in your religious views, you become even more fundamental in your religious views, whether it's someone who's a Christian fundamentalist or an atheist fundamentalist, So it just depends on where you're thinking, but it makes you more of who you are. And therefore, it creates this clear division in thought. And it has to do with the choice that humanity will be presented. And it's, according to the masters, this energy was sent out not only during the time of Jesus, which is one of the reasons why he was saying it, but also he was foreshadowing the future role of the Christ at this time, that it's a temporary situation, but even during Jesus' time, the people who he interacted with, it made him more of who they were. Now, if those people were living on the other side of the planet and didn't have any relation to Jesus, they probably didn't have quite as much of an effect. Now it's on a global scale, so it's affecting every single person on this planet. Because the choice is a global choice. It's not a regional or a group choice of whether we should share and share the resources of the world, learn to cooperate, bring about peace, or ultimately end life on this planet forever. So that's the choice. But like I said, it's a global choice, and that's the reason why it's affecting every one of us. Every single person is affected with this. It brings up all the corruption that's not only within us individually, but within governments, within groups of people. So we're starting to see it more and more. So both sides have their corruption. And both sides like to point out and point the finger at the other one, how corrupt they are and this, but yet they're both corrupt. And yet, as divided politically as things are, there's a reason why. Like I said, it's the energetic love nature of God that's bringing this up. It's a temporary situation, so it's not going to be like this forever. And it will swing things back the other way in equal and opposite proportion because it works within the law of cause and effect, opposite and equal. But as of right now, those divisions are keeping things from moving forward, from getting anything done. And this is on both sides, But the Republicans are far more adept at using ideology, using emotions to drum up their base and to create a fervent kind of dogmatic kind of zeal about their voters or their followers than the left. But the left seem like they can't get anything done, right? Right now we have both houses of Congress, not we, but the Democrats have both houses of Congress, and there's a Democratic president. Nothing's getting done. Well, if it was the same way with the Republicans, nothing would be getting done. You know what I'm saying? It's just, but you can't look at, to me, I guess, just to end the conversation about this, and hopefully we can see it in a different way. You just have to step back and look at it long term and look at it objectively and not take it so personally, because both sides do the exact same thing to some degree, except that the Democrats don't use religious ideology in the same way that the Republicans do. That's why I think the Republicans are more in danger of creating fascism in this country and have than the Democrats. But like I said, historically, they've eroded more rights, more of the Bill of Rights under George W. Bush and Dick Cheney right after 9/11, but yet they accuse the Democrats of doing that, and the Democrats have not done that in that way. So hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, you guys take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.